right, good morning, everyone. I think we're just going to dive straight into this panel discussion. We only have 30 minutes, so a lot to get through. We obviously have some very different speakers up here and some unique perspectives, and everyone's going to provide, I guess, very different points of view around the uses and future applications of blockchain. But I think we can start with you, Kat. Given your background at UBS, do you just want to give us some perspectives on what the various initiatives are at UBS around the blockchain space are at the moment?
Yeah, sure. Well, UBS, we actually have had a blockchain lab for about 4 or 5 years in London. So that's where the sort of core of what the initiatives are is going on. However, we also have a strategy team in Asia looking at it, because Asia is really seen from a regulation perspective as being one of the most liberal, with Australia, Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and of course Switzerland being another one, and being a Swiss bank, that puts us in quite a strong position. So Asia is definitely being seen as an incredibly interesting place for blockchain to take place. Now, it's all very good and well to say, okay, everything comes out of the lab. That's definitely not the case. We've got about 30 POCs that are going on through the bank. A lot of them are what we call stealth projects, so projects that have sort of survived in spite of the organization, as opposed to the ones that are actually brought up through the organization. The ones that I can actually speak about, of which there aren't that many, but we've had one that's coming out as utility settlement coins. That's been, I think, public for about 4 years. So that's one that we have led. And that's very much, it's similar to the JPM coin in some ways, other than it's at a higher level. So rather than it's between JPM and clients, it's more about between banks, between themselves with the central government, with the central bank. Then we've also got the trade platform that's coming out soon, so WeTrade. So that's about how to simplify and make it more transparent on the trade finance.
Well, you mentioned JPM coin. I think that made headlines in the past week. Jason, you're ex-JP Morgan yourself. Do you have, I guess, some initial perspectives on what this JPM coin actually means?
Yeah, I think, I feel very honored to mention something about JP Morgan, because, before joining the PlatON, I worked for JP Morgan for 12 years in New York City and covered in primary the private bank investment. So I'm the person, because I'm for the new innovation there. So I work with Amber, he's from the payment side. I come from, the private wealth management side. So in terms of the JP Morgan core, actually, I think, one thing a lot of people maybe, missed actually is another system called IIN, Interbank Information Network. What that really means, actually, it means as, it's not pure KYC, it's EML. So basically, it's like you have a list different bank. If you want to have international fund transfer, the big challenge is, how the different bank can share information, but they cannot disclose their information to other people and meet all the regulations and compliance. So that's the key challenge. It's not a payment itself. So that's why JP Morgan started looking for the privacy-preserving solution. It's not just pure the blockchain. So that's the key point I found from a lot of the blockchain project, privacy-preserving.
What about you, Ken? We're talking about JPM coin. I think we touched on the aspect of international payments. So what's your perspectives on the applications of this technology in that space, specifically as it relates to Hong Kong and the Greater Bay region?
Yep. Thanks, Ben. I think broadly speaking, so we see that blockchain is created to solve a real problem, as mentioned by a lot of panelists right now. So we believe that for JPM coin, so what they really want to try to solve, at least from two aspects, right? One is the internal operational efficiency, right? So we understand that there's a POC that it could help bringing a faster and more seamless international payment across global network within their corporate clients. I think that's fantastic, because it can really help bring a better customer experience for the customers, right? So that's fantastic. I mean, the second point, if zooming into a larger picture around how it would impact a global international network, right? So I don't have a crystal ball around this, but I think it will bring a lot of attention and also discussion within about how we can reimagine the international payment system, especially like SWIFT. They also invest a lot in different new technologies and innovation and blockchain, etc. So SWIFT also launched a GPI to help all the banks and also corporates to understand the flows in a more transparent way, just like what we understand from a delivery logistic manner. So we see that there could be bringing a lot more customer experience and also efficiency in the international market. And from Hong Kong or GBA perspective, I mean, one of the things that Hong Kong will keep driving in the agenda is we have to focus and bring more innovation around 4 areas: finance, trade, logistics, and aviation. And finance is definitely big, right, for Hong Kong. And I think a lot of the fellows here are from finance industry or involved in finance industry. So how JPM Coin could be in some way that some of the banks in Hong Kong could be participating in that, or how the regulator can push for this agenda, I think that could be some interesting we would expect to see.
I mean, I definitely see a lot of potential in the international payment space. If you look at the banking industry, I spent a lot of my career at UBS and Deutsche. One of the areas that's really struggling is the banks effectively de-risking to the nth degree. And a lot of the businesses being caught up in that is around international payments, particularly as they relate to correspondent banking relationships. And with those kind of channels being cut, a lot of the relationships for those correspondent banking channels are being, I guess, closed off because banks are now hypersensitive to KYC and AML risks. And in particular, I guess I see a huge application for blockchain technology to really solve part of this KYC AML problem, especially as it comes to sharing, I guess, knowledge between banks that doesn't have to be replicated 15 times for an onboarding process, but something that's almost like we have quasi-solution shared utilities at the moment. But all right, so I guess it's a broader question, but we can open up to all the panelists. Do you see this technology as an opportunity or a threat?
From a UBS perspective, we have this conversation all the time. You know, is it something that we're making the most of, or is it something we have to defend ourselves on? So it definitely gets quite heated. If I look from my perspective, I come not from a banking background. I've been with the bank 2 years. I've actually had 8 of my own technology companies, mostly in the mobile space. So I always think about it in terms of how telcos faced, VoIP, voice over IP, when it first arrived. And the point was, no, these are our clients. We own it. We control it. This is where we play. We know this space. So therefore, we should stop it. We should shut it down. What happened? It happened anyway. And the rails basically is all they provide now. So they basically moved themselves out of the space. So what we're looking at with Bitcoin and with blockchain, we're looking very much at money over IP, so MOIP. So if you look at it as MOIP, are we going to be that settlement layer, or will we get smarter and we'll be able to, if we're at the front of it, can we be more aggressive about how we can move into this space to take advantage of the opportunity? So if you look at, for example, when SMS came out, same thing happened. How do we shut it down? How do we charge? How do we make money out of what's happening? Instead, when they started to bundle, then you saw the velocity, then you saw the transaction go. And so that's what we're going to have to do in this space, is to increase that technology, that velocity of money. And at the moment, we're still looking at it as a case of it's something we can control. And with the bank's mindset, that is the thing that we're having to look how to change that mindset. And that's, I think, why one of my main jobs is in there, to challenge how do you look at this from a different perspective. Because as Jason was saying earlier, our value is trust, right? That is where people come to, that's why they come to banks, is trust. So obviously we can't go around launching new products that put our clients at risk. Our key thing is to make sure they make their money, right? They grow their money, and that's what they're trying to do. So trying to balance these 2 needs together is definitely an exciting role.
Yeah, I want to continue your question. I think the key part, actually, if we learn from the internet, I think is the leading effect is the key. So it is, you will feel a lot of threat, but you cannot wait. If you wait, you lose the game. Like, think about all the internet. In any area, no matter the payment, the social media, everything only top 2 survive. So that's another big reason why JP Morgan won't jump to this world. JP Morgan is very conservative. It's not like very aggressive. But now, why? You see the Ripple. You see the Bitcoin, each of the cakes of JP Morgan offshore payment system. That's why he wants to be the leader. He has no choice. He knows that. And another thing I want to mention is, like, a lot of people think the cost, right? So for example, the payment system, the cost efficiency is not the consensus itself. Why it takes so long time for the payment, especially for the international transfer A lot of people outside of the world don't know. It is AML. Why? Because if JP Morgan want to do the international fund transfer from New York clients to a small town in India, he has to go to HSBC first. And then HSBC has to go to the Indian big bank, and then go to small bank. At least 4 banks get involved. The challenge is each company, each bank maintain their own AML list. They cannot share with you, but they want to verify with you. This is like what we call it. That's why initially JP Morgan used quorum. It's no choice, but it's not perfect. There's no way to get third-party regulation get involved. That's why they talk with the CQ snark. You can find the news. They talk with CQ snark. It's zero knowledge. But it also have a lot of problems with CQ snark. It's not answer requests because on one way, you need multi-party to work on it with privacy-preserving feature. That's something we are working on. The PlatON is really working on called MPC, the multi-party computation. Exactly try to resolve. You have the multi-banks each equally, but you also want to work together, but you cannot release your information to other guys. How you can get the cooperation very quickly? That's you have crypto, the technology, which is MPC is one of it, but it's very, very important. And this part down, the settlements is very quick. It's not, the challenge part is not the consensus, it's not the settlement. The challenge part is how you can meet the regulation, how you can make the data privacy requirement. That's the key.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think if we assume larger, but not just only the JPM coin, right? So we see the blockchain technology has enormous potential to redefine ecosystem and to redefine the industry rules, right? And that could pose 2 questions, right? It depends on which entity that you're asking to, right? So for some of the incumbents, right, that they are already earning a huge revenue, right, along the industry value chains, they will see that's a threat, right? But for some of the startup guys or for some of the new players that they want to leverage this technology to redefine it, that's the opportunity, right? So it depends on who you are talking to, and their answer could be quite different as well. Another point I would point out for blockchain, right, it encouraged a lot around collaborations between different parties, right? So, so recently, from our perspective, from Zhong'an perspective, is we are in discussion with a lot of top-tier blockchain companies to see is how we can collaborate together to create a bigger pie for the market share. So the dialogue is quite different to a normal technology that is about how can I gain in a zero-sum game, right? But in blockchain discussion or some of the our serious collaboration that we will have is we are saying how we can create synergy using this technology. I think the whole mindset discussion is really different and the potential can be huge, but the underlying principle is how you collaborate with each other, how you redefine the best interest along the ecosystem about this technology. So a lot of people just focus on the technology itself, but forget about how it would bring additional value to all the people in the value chain.
I was just going to add to that. In terms of this particular industry, though, there is one element that really has a major influence on what's happening, and that's regulation. If you look at when the internet came out, everybody thought that internet banks would take over the world and the traditional banks wouldn't exist anymore. And that's been proven wrong, and regulators have been the ones that have actually managed to keep them in play quite as much as they have. And I think that the same may happen, may protect the banks to a certain extent, or protect the clients. Obviously, they're trying to protect banking clients, but that means the huge onus goes on the bank, and most tech companies really have no interest in getting involved in that space. It's hideously painful, which is why people have tried to avoid it so far. But I think that's also one thing that is going to keep the ecosystem in a little bit more structured space.
Adding a little to that part, if you see like last year, a lot of people know what's Jamie Dimon's, the view about Bitcoin, right? It's fraud. Right now, if asking, what's their official attitude to the cryptocurrency, it's very clear. Okay, they support cryptocurrency, but as long as it's properly controlled and regulated. So the little part is extremely important. So, that's what I'm trying to say here. Like, for example, right now, for a lot of internet companies, one of the huge regulation is data privacy. So whatever you do, you have to make sure the privacy was, implemented. That's another part, like what we are working on here is like, okay, all kinds of different privacy solution to the data, to the algorithm, to a lot of stuff. Like, even earlier when, Mr. Qiao said, the company has no way to protect their, the copyright. But now you have, the most important thing you need to protect is your data, is your privacy.
Yeah, I think most important is we have to take care different perspective and interests along the value chain players, including regulators, right? So regulators is not an entity that you want to flee away, or you want to do something that you don't want them to be pay attention to. But more important is how you really engage them, understand where they're coming from, right? So it's very important that we understand what the associated risks and how you place a control, you understand the mitigate risk. So there are a lot of good learnings, right, from financial industry that we can apply when we want to use a new technology like blockchain, right? So I think for example in Hong Kong, so from Zhong'an International, so we have constant discussion with a lot of regulators in Hong Kong. So we feel the sentiment is that we're welcoming new ideas, right? They really want to understand more around this technology, how this could be bringing additional benefits to Hong Kong, etc. So it's not as scary as people may perceive, right? But I think when the sentiment has been shifted, it will bring a new wave of innovation in the industry as well.
That's very interesting, Ken. I mean, can you give us some specific examples of what Zhong'an's doing in this space? Just perhaps a few things for the audience to kind of mull over.
Sure. So Zhong'an International is a subsidiary to Zhong'an Online Insurance. So back in 2016, right? So we have invested more than 150 persons in blockchain technologies and explore a lot of application in industries such as supply chain financing, agriculture, illiquid assets, including like diamonds. So last year, we also issued a white paper in China is to define a Ministry of Commerce blockchain technology standards, along with Tencent as well. One of the use cases that we have been doing is tokenizing our own insurance policies that are being manufactured and distributed in China. So one of the nodes that we include is in regulator. So they can view all the insurance policy and being audited in a more seamless manner. So we try to push a lot of boundary in China, and I think from our setup in Zhong'an International in Hong Kong is we want to bring the same spirit and work with a lot of players in this industry to try to bring an innovation for Hong Kong and Greater Bay Area.
All right, I guess this is slightly more contentious, but a lot of people talk about the limitations of blockchain being that it has no real-world application, the lack of use cases out there. I mean, everyone keeps talking about this, but I guess we really need to drill down on what problems is it actually solving. And I guess we get to something like JPM Coin, and it's a little chat we had before, but is something like this a real use case, or is this more a POC, you know? Kat?
I think that there is a lot of busy work going on in this space right now. There's a lot of people trying to, push things out and convincing themselves, actually, yes, we're really at the forefront. And often it really is a case of, and there is value, no question, in terms of who's learning what, whether it's the business side learning about the opportunity or the technologists. So there is definitely a huge amount to be learned from, but it's important that you understand that a lot of these things are never going to be launched. Right? They're never going to get out into the market, and they're never going to change anything. So it's important to really decide which ones you're going to push out. And I think that so often POCs are stopping everybody move and do that as well. Right? So often, it's like, yes, we've got all these things. It's like, yeah, irrelevant, irrelevant, irrelevant. You will never launch them. And I think it takes really, I'm incredibly lucky to work for the head of North Asia, and she's incredibly proactive, aggressive. She really believes we should be doing more. And so for her, if you say, look, we know that's not going to get launched, it will never get past our internal systems, which ones are going to change the world? Which ones can we actually move on? And so I think that's what we're all trying to get to. But I think that realistically in enterprise, we're not there yet, and not just banking. I mean, if you think about when it first came out, it really was the anarchists who came out with blockchain and Bitcoin, and then it was the libertarians, right? And then, of course, then the speculators came in. Now those tourists have gone home. Now it's a case of, right, the true believers. And so I think the money that went in with all the ICO, that is now about the time that it's going to start bringing fruition. Some of these projects are going to start coming out to market and really be bringing us some proper uses. A lot of them will be, I think, as Ralph was saying in the previous panel, we may be beginning to see some things or experience things that we're not even aware of, whether it's on your supply chain logistics on the blockchain side, things like that, whether it's transactions. I mean, CryptoKitties, I don't think that's one we're going to talk about. Yeah, so I think at the moment we're still in POC, but we've got to be in POC to drive that learning curve.
Yep. Ken and Jason?
I think one of the big misunderstanding about this new technology is use the word blockchain. So the fundamental technology is cryptography, right? But people narrow down to the blockchain. I think a huge, application actually is from privacy. Why I give you a very example. Like today, if you use WeChat, can you put your, the ID, passport on your phone? No. It's very, very dangerous to put any kind of ID on your WeChat. You need cryptography technology to make sure, okay, this thing is saved on my iPhone, but it will be crypted. Nobody can see it. Only I have the private key, I can see it. So this is very simple, urgent, immediately use case by every people if you want to use a mobile phone. One thing, another thing, like Mr. Qiao mentioned earlier, okay, next time you have the AI data, the data is gasoline, you mentioned everything based on data, but my question is, how can you let the data move? If without privacy, later you give away the ownership of the data. It's the same thing is, okay, if you want to go outside, take taxi, you have to buy the taxi because you cannot own it. You later transfer the ownership. So if you really want to have this, the data-driven business to blow up, number one thing is you find a new technology to make sure the data can be leased or rent, which means, okay, you can use my data, and you can aggregate my data, but you never see my data. You can get the data output, like my gene, anything else, but you cannot get my data. So ownership of the data is number one thing here. Even go to bigger, the freedom. The overall, the society, right? In the Western part, what is really about the privacy? Should, the private world should be protected. That's number one thing here. It's foundation of almost everything, right? That's how you work so hard because what you get is will be protected. Here today, okay, if you want to share anything with other people, the foundation part is any of your private data should be protected. But it's not by law, it has to be by technology. So I think if you're from that way, okay, open the mind, it's not blockchain, it's a cryptography technology. It's used more broadly than that part. Privacy was totally missed over the last 10 years. I think from this year, you'll keep hear more and more about privacy, which will be way, way, way bigger and more important than the traditional blockchain. That's what we believe. That's what we work on, the PlatON.
Ken, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so before I joined Zhongan International, I was with different banks and consulting. So I think a lot of the buzzword comes out, right, when you want to try to push a lot of new things in the financial industry. So when you put a little word like AI, machine learning, blockchain, right, you get the people attention in the PowerPoint, so people say, oh, wow, geez, right, what's that, right? So people try to do a lot of this, right, and I think that may make sense, right, from their perspective. But I think in terms of promoting the industry, right, so again, no matter you are the traditional financial institutions or startup, the key part is whether you really solve a customer problem or you only add a enormous potential technology to something that you cannot create the value. So that's something I think we are on the right in shifting the momentum, shifting the sentiment that we have also seen in different industries. But it's something that I think especially in Hong Kong, so where we have seen quite a progressive regulatory environment and also discussion coming on. So personally, I really expect there could be a number of really good use cases, not just from POC perspective, could be happening in this year about how we can really solve the industry like trade finance, right? So last year, Hong Kong MA also launched a trade finance platform using blockchain, and how this to be flied out, right? It really needs a collaborative effort in the industry. And same as the other industries, like how cryptocurrency or the digital assets being treated as an alternative assets, how can you work on this around it? So we will observe that there are a lot of discussions around these topics already happening. So I'm very positive and also quite progressive to think that there will be a lot more happening in Hong Kong in the next year or so.
No, it's interesting you mentioned the trade finance point. I think a lot of people get the whole idea of what blockchain you can do convoluted with the cryptocurrency space. Whether that's a good or bad thing is up for debate. I mean, it was good to bring the technology to light, but I think it gave it a bit of a bad rap in terms of what other areas it could really address. In terms of use case, you mentioned trade finance. Jason and Kat, do you see particular areas of the industry and banking as actually where blockchain can fundamentally have a more important use case? Jason, sounds like yours is around privacy and AML. Kat, you have any other perspectives on this?
I definitely think on the e-identity side, I think there's an enormous opportunity there. But again, how do you do it without becoming that centralized player again, right? And you know, come to the same thing. I mean, there's that great example of that refugee camp in Afghanistan, and they, you know, where they're using blockchain to actually make sure people are actually being fed. And they're using retinal scans because nobody has any documentary proof of who they are, right? They're all refugees. And so they do a retinal scan, then they can prove you've eaten, because theft of food is huge, a huge problem in refugee camps. But the problem is, again, you have the honeypot, right, to steal. Now, in a refugee camp, you're probably like, okay, well, stealing these people's ID is probably not the biggest pie I'm going to go after right now. So I think it's really looking at identity, I think, is a big one.
In the long run, our vision is, we can use one word, is more like a tokenized Wall Street. So we literally believe almost everything you saw today on the Wall Street can move to the blockchain. But in the short term, I think the most important part actually is everything right now is a private key. Everything is private key. So, for example, when we talk about all the crypto assets, right? So how you manage your crypto assets? Finally, the safety is number one concern right now. So the safe box is not a solution, right? People say this is like digital gold, but it's not gold. You cannot put it in the safe box and in the safe box and make it safe. No, the private key is everything. So if you lose private key, you lose everything. Even yourself, it's very safe. But if you forget, you lose everything. So right now, the most challenging part actually for us is, okay, number one, you have to make it very, very safe, but you also think about, be user-friendly, like the key recovery, and how to make the private key managed safe, but also allow them to trading and transfer the fund. That's something like a fundamental thing before we talk about, fund, before we talk about trading, before we talk about almost everything. That's why, for us, we think, okay, right now, all the solutions we saw today, the hot wallet, the cold wallet, even you have the multi-signature, all the solution is not adequate. And that's also why the regulation from SEC, they don't, right now approve any ETF, any kind of the institutional level. Because what if something wrong with that part? Who is responsible for the loss, right? So later, what we saw, two things. Number one, technology. You need much better technology, more than the multi-signature. Number two, you need insurance. That's why, I think something like the traditional insurance company have to think about it. If you will be work as the final insurer, that'll be much, much better to this ecosystem, because this guy take care of all the risk. It's not traditional credit risk. It's technology risk right now. So if you lose, if something wrong with the private key, lose everything.
But there's a great little video of a girl who goes out, a woman who goes out in New York, and she takes out a $4,000 bar of gold, and she takes out 1 Bitcoin, and she tries to spend her various monies. And of course, her fear is, actually, I'm more at risk if somebody attacks me from the gold. So the gold is actually less safe for her. And of course, she can't spend gold, but she can, in some places, she can buy her meals.
If you carry your private key, which is the same as you use a safe box, and every people know you carry $1 million in your safe box and walk on the street. It's very dangerous.
Yes, but so's carrying $1 million of gold.
Well, I guess no blockchain discussion would be rounded out and complete without the story of cryptos. So, I mean, some of the aspects you're drawing on is really, a lot of players in the market are saying in order to get the institutional adoption there and the players involved, custody is obviously a big challenge. We're short on time, but do you want to give your 30-second to 60-second view each about the future of the crypto industry and what it means for, I guess, potential institutional adoption and what hurdles need to be overcome? Maybe we can start with you, Ken.
30 seconds.
Sure. So I think cryptocurrency has proved that it is here to stay. More important is how can we bring an additional assurance to institutional investor and retail investor that their Bitcoin or their currencies are here, that they can protect it, right? So they really need a trust entity, right? Either it's a startup or a traditional financial institution that can play this role, right? So I think Jason has made a good point, like how insurance can be really feeling through around this. So I think we need a lot of more industry players to really crack this problem, so a single entity cannot. So again, it plays to the blockchain spirit is collaboration.
Yeah, pretty much what he said. I think.
Yeah, one thing I want to add is very important. The traditional insurance is more for the credit risk. So for now, I think if for all the cryptocurrency has to be really I think the key is key management system, private key. So if we don't have really good private key management system, nothing will not happen. So that's what I'm saying. Every people should. This is not easy. So I'm encourage every people. If you're an investor or if you have the product the work on startup, I think this is something really really cool. Number one, but also very important. It's more of the foundation, the cornerstone for all the financial and trading, settlement, custodian, insurance, all my other things. So. We are open to this, the discussion, and we really, pioneer in this field. So if you have any kind of things about how we can manage the key, smartly, safely, so we are open to talk.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time, so if you could please extend a warm welcome to Kat, Jason, and Ken for sharing their expertise, and I'm sure they'll be around to mingle so you can ask them questions during the break. Thank you.
Thank you.
感谢各位嘉宾精彩的分享。Thank you so much for a great discussion.